He didn't even notice the dog at first. Just a shape behind the dumpster, outside Building 14, half hidden in shadows, ribs showing through a coat that might have once been beautiful, now matted with grease and rain. But when Jordan, a 24-year-old delivery driver barely scraping by on tips and overtime, bent to scan a package, he heard a low, trembling whine and turned to see a German shepherd, trembling, eyes locked onto the sandwich in his hand, not with menace, but with the soft, resigned hunger of something that had forgotten what kindness felt like. It was just instinct. He tore the sandwich in half and gently slid a piece across the pavement, watching the dog inch forward, wary, as if every step forward risked pain. The shepherd finally ate, slowly, never taking his eyes off Jordan. "Good boy," Jordan whispered, voice cracking. And he meant it, not just as praise but as apology. Every day that week, he came back. He brought kibble from his own pantry, bottled water, a blanket. He started calling him Major. The shepherd never growled, never barked, only watched him with a kind of cautious gratitude that made Jordan feel seen in a way he hadn't in years. But on Friday, as Jordan was crouched beside Major, offering him chicken and scratching gently behind his ear, his supervisor, Rodney, the type of man who valued speed over soul, came screeching up in the company van, red-faced and furious. "What the hell are you doing?" Rodney snapped, arms flailing. "You're on the clock. That mutt's not your responsibility." Jordan tried to explain, tried to say that the dog was harmless, that he was starving, that he was just a soul trying to survive. But Rodney wasn't listening. "Hand over your badge and vest," he said, voice icy. "You're done." It felt like a punch. No warnings, no appeal. Just like that. Fired for showing compassion. Jordan stood there, stunned, the leash he'd just bought for Major still in his hands. "You'd fire a guy for feeding a dog?" he asked softly. "No," Rodney replied coldly. "I'd fire a guy for wasting time." Minutes later, as Rodney sped away in the van, karma struck so swiftly it felt divine. He clipped the curb, panicked, overcorrected, and the front tire burst violently, sending the van into a parked police cruiser just up the block. Jordan watched in silence as officers came running out, one of them recognizing him from his regular deliveries. "You okay?" the officer asked. Jordan nodded. "Yeah," he said, glancing down at Major, who had crept to his side, pressing against his leg like he belonged there. "I'm better than okay." The officer, noticing the dog and the still warm food bowl, raised an eyebrow. "That your dog?" Jordan paused, then said, "He is now." Word of the firing and the crash spread fast, and within days, a video surfaced of Jordan feeding Major, taken by a tenant who'd been watching the sweet ritual all week. It went viral. Donations came in. A local rescue offered to cover Major's vet bills. And a regional pet food company offered Jordan a new job, one where feeding dogs wasn't just allowed, it was the mission. Now, months later, Jordan delivers hope in a different uniform, with Major riding shotgun, ears perked, tail thumping against the seat. And every stop they make reminds Jordan of one thing. Sometimes the world punishes kindness, but kindness always finds its way back, with interest. It had been 3 months since Jordan lost his job for feeding a stray and gained a partner for life in return. And in that short time, everything had changed. His apartment, once silent and grey, now echoed with the thud of paws on hardwood and the gentle jingle of Major's collar as the dog followed him from room to room, like a shadow that finally found its light. They rode together every morning in Jordan's new delivery van, this one bearing the logo of a local pet supply non-profit called Paw Forward, where Jordan was now not just a delivery driver, but a community contact for people struggling to care for their animals. He handed out food, supplies, blankets, even arranged mobile vet clinics. And everywhere he went, Major was by his side, a silent ambassador of hope, with eyes that seemed to understand every broken heart they met. But it was on a grey Wednesday, the kind where the sky forgets how to shine, that something happened that would shift the purpose of their work forever. Jordan had just finished a drop-off at a halfway house on the edge of the city when Major's ears pricked up sharply, his whole body tensing as they passed a cluster of abandoned sheds. "What is it, Bud?" Jordan asked, heart tightening. He had learned by now to trust Major's instincts. The dog pulled against the leash gently but firmly, guiding Jordan toward the back of a collapsed structure where the wind rattled sheet metal like bones. At first, Jordan heard nothing, but then a faint, wheezing whimper reached him, so soft it could have been mistaken for the wind. Major barked once, sharp and urgent, then lowered himself to the ground, crawling into the shadows beneath the bent frame. Jordan dropped to his knees and peered in, and his chest ached at what he saw. A young German shepherd, barely past puppyhood, its leg twisted at a wrong angle, soaked and shivering, too weak even to stand. Beside it, an empty collar and an old chew toy, soggy from the rain. Someone had left him here. Someone had walked away. Jordan moved slowly, voice low and steady, reaching in with trembling hands. Major stayed close, nudging the pup with his nose, offering reassurance like only a dog who had once felt the same fear could do. The rescue was delicate. Jordan had to wedge himself halfway under the shed to lift the pup free, every whimper cutting through him like glass. He wrapped the dog in his jacket, pressing him close to his chest, whispering, "It's okay now. We've got you." The nearest vet was nearly 30 minutes away, but Major sat in the back seat the whole time, curled around the injured pup like a shield. The vet's face tightened when she saw the leg. It was broken and infected, left untreated too long. But she looked up at Jordan and said, "You brought him just in time. He's going to make it." They named him Lucky. And over the weeks that followed, Lucky healed in Jordan's apartment, where Major became his mentor and guardian, teaching him how to play, how to trust, how to rest without fear. Watching them together, Jordan often found himself overcome with emotion, because he saw something he never expected. Not just a rescued dog, but a rescuer in return. Major had chosen to stop that day. He had heard a cry the world tried to ignore. And now, Lucky followed him everywhere, limping slightly, still learning, but filled with the kind of loyalty that could only be born from pain turned into purpose. Jordan didn't need a uniform anymore to feel proud. He had a mission, and with Major leading the way and Lucky learning to follow, he knew this was just the beginning. It had been almost 2 months since Lucky came into their lives, and though his leg still carried a slight limp and his confidence sometimes faltered in loud crowds, he had bloomed into something unrecognizable from the broken pup they'd pulled from beneath that shed. He chased sunbeams across the apartment floor, slept curled against Major's side every night, and had even learned how to nudge the treat jar open when he thought no one was watching. Jordan often found himself pausing in doorways, just watching the two shepherds rest together, feeling a kind of quiet gratitude that came from being part of something bigger than himself. But it was a quiet Sunday morning, the kind where the city hadn't quite woken up yet, when everything shifted again. The Pour Forward van was packed for their usual neighborhood run, pet food deliveries, check-ins with struggling owners. But as they rolled through a storm-damaged side of town still recovering from last week's rains, Jordan spotted a girl no older than 12 standing barefoot in the mud, clutching a leash with nothing on the other end. Her cheeks were stained with tears, and when she saw the van, she ran forward, waving both arms. Jordan pulled over immediately. "Sir, please," she cried, voice cracking. "Can you help me find him? My dog ran out when the back gate blew open last night. I've looked everywhere, and no one's helping." Jordan got out, kneeling to meet her eyes. "What's his name?" he asked softly. "Diesel," she whispered. "He's a German shepherd, too." Behind him, Major perked up instantly. Jordan could tell he'd heard the name before the girl even said it a second time. "We'll find him," he promised. And so the three of them, Jordan, Major, and Lucky, set off through the flooded alleys and cracked sidewalks of the neighborhood, searching. They asked around, checked yards, scanned culverts and corners. Hours passed. The girl grew quiet, dragging the empty leash behind her like a ghost of hope. But then, just as the sun dipped behind a distant rooftop, Lucky froze. His ears twitched. He whined, low and sharp, then broke into a limping sprint toward an abandoned mechanic's garage nearby, with Major right behind him. Jordan called after them, heart pounding, the girl stumbling beside him. They followed the sound of barking. First Lucky's, then Major's, then a deeper, more desperate bark answered from within the garage. Inside, beneath a fallen shelving unit, was a massive black and tan shepherd, his hind leg pinned and eyes wide with fear. "Diesel!" the girl screamed, sprinting to his side, tears pouring down her face. The dog whimpered, tail wagging weakly. Major moved forward, licking Diesel's face, calming him, while Jordan used a metal rod to lift the shelf just enough to free his leg. Diesel yelped as he was pulled out, but when the girl collapsed against his muddy fur, he buried his face into her neck and let out a sound that was almost human. They got him to the van. Diesel's leg was sprained, not broken, and the vet gave him anti-inflammatories and pain relief. But what stuck with Jordan was something the vet quietly whispered to him after. "You didn't just find her dog, you saved her heart." Later that night, after Diesel had been reunited with his mother and the van finally rolled to a stop outside Jordan's apartment, he sat in the front seat for a long while, his hand resting on Major's head, Lucky asleep with his nose on Jordan's arm. He thought of how quickly everything could have gone another way. If he hadn't stopped to feed that first sandwich, if he'd listened to Rodney, if he'd given up. But kindness, he'd learned, creates ripples, and sometimes it creates rescues that stretch far beyond what the eyes can see. Inside, on a note pinned beside the fridge, he scribbled a new mission statement. "We don't just deliver supplies, we deliver second chances." The story of Jordan and his dogs had begun as a whisper, just a former delivery driver with a fired heart and a rescued shepherd at his side. But it had grown, slowly and steadily, into something more. Ever since they found Diesel and returned him to the girl with the empty leash, people had started to notice. It was no longer uncommon for neighbors to flag down the poor forward van, not to request help, but to offer it. A retired carpenter offered to build custom ramps for elderly dogs. A teenager who once feared dogs asked if he could walk Lucky after school. A coffee shop owner began setting aside scraps each morning for strays in the park. And Jordan, still in his second-hand jacket, still the same man who once got fired for giving half his lunch to a dog, had somehow become the quiet heartbeat of an unspoken movement. Kindness in action. But it was when he received an envelope in the mail, stamped with the seal of the mayor's office, that things took an unexpected turn. Inside was a formal invitation to the annual City Hope Honors Gala, where citizens who made extraordinary contributions to the community were celebrated. Jordan stared at it for a long time, unsure whether to laugh or cry. He hadn't done anything special, he thought. He'd just followed his gut, listened to Major, and chosen not to walk away when the world looked the other way. But that night, as he sat with Major curled at his feet and Lucky dozing with his head in Jordan's lap. He realized something. This wasn't about awards. This was a chance to shine a light on every animal still waiting to be seen. When the night of the gala arrived, Jordan didn't own a suit. A neighbor insisted on tailoring one for him. "For everything you've done, this is the least we can do." He brought Major and Lucky, cleaned and brushed, their coats gleaming under the string lights of the City Hall courtyard. The room was filled with polished speeches and polite applause, but everything shifted when Jordan's name was called. He stepped up to the podium, his voice shaking at first. Major stood beside him, calm and proud. Lucky watched from the front row with the little girl who had once wept for Diesel's return, now hugging her shepherd tightly. "I didn't set out to make a difference," Jordan began, eyes scanning.